Hello, wonderful people of the internet. Welcome back to another episode of Simuleos. Gibbous and anyone who might be lurking in chat, hey, thanks for being here. Gibbous, good luck with the, what did you call it? It is the crew watch. Sorry, it took me a second to go back to the very top of the chat. To Cinderella tomorrow. I know you've been looking forward to it for a while, so I hope it's fun. I mean, I think you'll enjoy it a lot. It's different than what I thought it was. I don't really know much about it, but yeah, I hope it goes well. Good morning. I'm finally up early enough to watch. To be fair, I've just been super inconsistent. I've been really doing my best to have longer streams, and I just haven't been able to do the longer streams. So I start in the mornings. Well, I start in the afternoons, usually around 2:00 p.m. My time, and then I'm like, oh, I'll go for about 6 hours, and then I go for 30 minutes. I'm like, whew, I'm pooped, I'm done. I don't know what the deal is. I've just been so tired recently, and it's not like me. During my PhD, I was up at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, every 4:30 in the morning, every morning, getting ready for stream, then doing stream, then working out, then going to work for 8-9 hours a day, then coming home. I was working really hard, and I enjoyed it, but I don't know, something about MIT and burnout just made it so I'm a different person now, and I don't get nearly as much stuff done. Hoping to change that, and we'll see what we can do. So, right, let's go ahead and introduce what we're doing today, because there's a lot of interesting little pieces of the puzzle all kind of working together into something that make this particular simulation very interesting. By the way, Kevin, because I was up all night doing schoolwork, I know I'm going to be the old guy in the room and say that, during, university, specifically undergraduate, I was working my butt off. Genuinely speaking, working way more than what I did during the PhD. I was just, I was teaching classes during my undergraduate. I was doing research with 3 different research labs. I was taking the undergraduate course load, and actually taking graduate courses as well. I was doing a lot during my undergraduate, and there were nights when I would be lucky to get 4 hours of sleep. Actually, weeks in which I'd be lucky to get 4 hours of sleep a night. What I'm trying to say is, it's not healthy, and I at the time, I very much I was one of those people that, encourage this type of behavior. I was like, hey, you should be working so hard that you don't get to sleep at night and all this kind of stuff. And maybe to some extent that is true. You should definitely be working hard, but certainly not at the, cost of your own well-being. What really helped with my productivity before and after my PhD was the Pomodoro technique. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but people have been saying it to me a lot, specifically after my Swoleo's workout program and stuff. Look, if I'm honest, I know exactly the reason why I've been just struggling, and it has nothing to do with, I keep blaming it on different things. I'm like, I blame it on MIT. I blame it on, not working out regularly. But the truth is, I'm just a wimp now, and I need to just sit down and do stuff. And nothing. The problem is I printed out this huge stack of papers. I've read 20 papers since the last stream in the last 3 days. But the thing is, I like reading papers. This isn't something I'm doing because it's I'm getting work done. But the problem with reading papers is I really do enjoy it. I like it more than watching YouTube videos, browsing Reddit, literally anything else. I love reading papers. But the problem with it is, when I start reading papers, I get lulled into this sense of productivity. It feels like I'm doing work, when I know for a fact I'm not actually doing anything. I'm just reading stupid papers, which admittedly will help in the long run, but at some point you actually have to get work done, so anyway, it's just one of those things. But I do want to go ahead and introduce what we're doing today, because there are a bunch of interesting things, again, all working together, and we'll just kind of get started on that. Most of my stuff is graphical work. What is graphical? Oh, you mean art stuff, or it's a naive, stupid question, I'm sorry. Zernal PP, and let's go. Okay, so as you can see from the title, today we're working on a 4D galaxy sim. Okay, now, here's the thing. A long time ago, that was a expletive D, come on, 4D galaxy sim, there we go. A long time ago, literally years ago, right when I started with Julia, so around Julia 0.3, a super long time ago, we did something known as a Barnes Hut simulation. Now, the Barnes Hut simulation turned into a video that we put out on color quantization. right? So it ended up being useful for something. But essentially, we did a large-scale three-dimensional galaxy simulation. We tried Julia, we did C++, we tried a bunch of different things, and no matter what we did, we couldn't quite get the visualization for the Barnes-Hut algorithm to work. But now, we have a bunch of new techniques that I learned since the fractal flame algorithm that can genuinely be useful for just doing basic plotting of this type of stuff. So to some extent, we can probably do the same simulations that we did before with the Barnes-Hut simulator and get some interesting results out, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Let me see, what do we have here? I know that feeling too well. I call it productive procrastination. Yeah, architecture and urban design. Ah, yes, uppercase 4. Anyway, architecture is one of those things. So everyone that does architecture always tells me that it's like an insane amount of work, but I'm not saying it's not, for the record. I'm saying it probably is. What I was trying to say is that it feels like one of those majors, or those like, how do I say, like one of those fields that encourages you to do those all-nighters, which I previously said, I used to get into as well when I was an undergraduate. But again, like I'm going to be the old man in the room and just say, if you can manage a healthy, work-life balance, that's obviously going to be, not obviously, but it will be better than the, all-nighters every night type of thing. And I realize maybe the course load doesn't allow you to do that, but, whenever you can't get some sleep, definitely get some sleep. I'm not going to feel bad for you leaving the stream to take a nap, like definitely just do what you feel like you need to do. Again, don't let your education like take away your own mental well-being or something like that. That's one surefire way to feel burnt out. Okay. So back to the galaxy simulation. There's lots of things. I don't know where we should start. If we should start with the 4D or the galaxy or the simulator. Let's start with the one I'm least interested in. So we'll talk about the galaxy part. All right. Here's the thing. I know very little about actual galaxy simulations, right? I'm just going to wear that on my chest, not with pride, but with humility here, saying that I should know more, but I don't. What I do know is the following. If you take a three-dimensional simulation and you allow it to progress for a couple billion years, depending on the number of particles that you have, it will create a 2D disk or spiral. Now, what I didn't know before reading these papers is that disk or spiral, though it can be technically generated with exclusively stars, requires actually a large lump of dark matter to actually work appropriately. To get the appropriate spiral pattern, you just need a bunch of dark matter in addition to the stars to make the system work. That is something I didn't know. So what we're doing here is we're going to basically do a large n-body simulator with stars and dark matter. But I think we're only going to visualize the stars. Hey, Kropeb, how are you? Stars. Hope you're having a great day. So as far as the galaxy simulation is concerned, look, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to claim that this galaxy simulator that you're doing is not physically accurate. And I'm going to be honest, they're right. The point with this particular simulation is not to make the most physically accurate galaxy. It's to kind of see what kind of features you would expect if you were to bring the galaxy to 4D, but also to improve n-body simulators in general. Like, that's kind of what we're focusing on. 4D galaxy, yeah, so we're basically just going to take a basic n-body galaxy, like a basic n-body simulator for galaxies via the Barnes-Hut algorithm, and just see what happens if you have 4 spatial dimensions. This means different force laws, probably 1 over r cubed instead of 1 over r squared, and see what happens. If you have a paper to say it doesn't work, that would be nice. Yeah, go ahead and give that to me if you could. Because the only papers I could find on 4D galaxy simulations they were kind of not good, if that makes sense. Like they were either too mathy, such that they didn't actually solve the question at hand, or like just not well written. Like they didn't have a clear. Like I didn't believe their results, is what I'm gonna say, is what they have. Now look, there is a clear reason why it wouldn't work. And that is that, like, the formation of stable orbits is very difficult to do. I don't think it's possible in 1 over r cubed. But at the same time, I don't think you need... I don't know if you need the stable orbit. I thought it wouldn't converge to a disk. Right, that's also our question. That's actually why we're doing it. I don't know if it converges to a disk or not. There's probably some analytical studies that show whether it does or doesn't, but I couldn't find them. I mean, maybe I should have just looked for n-body simulators with different force laws, maybe, is what I should have done. But we'll get into that in just a second. My main question is, one, does it converge into a disk? I don't think it does, but does it? That's number one question. Two, if it does converge into a disk, does it converge into one disk or two disks? And if it does converge to two disks, and there is previous research, again, I couldn't find the previous research, but if there is previous research in this, did they just not wait long enough for the two disks to form? Because the issue here is that, if you have 4D, then you technically have two ways in which you can rotate. Like you can rotate along the X, Y, and ZW plane at the same time, called a double rotation. Because in 4D, you can rotate around two axes at the same time, can't you? Right, exactly. So what my feeling is that you're going to get a double rotating galaxy instead of a single rotating galaxy. So that's a question. One, does it form a disk, right? Two, can you get a double rotating galaxy? Or three, does it stabilize onto one rotational plane instead of two rotational planes? That's my question. I don't know. There's a bunch of questions here, if you have a 1 over r cubed force law, does this obviously you can't get stable orbits anymore, but do you need the stable orbits for the spiral? I mean, not really, right? I mean, because it's not like anything orbiting there except for in the small scale dynamics. So I don't know. That's kind of stuff that we're looking at. Now, to be honest, most of these questions here, I'll just go ahead and write them down. Disk generation, we'll say disk generation, double rotating, this type of stuff, all of that. These are the type of questions that we're asking. Haha, dang, I need to speed up my project with this. Wait, what project exactly? Okay, so all of these questions that we're asking about, can it generate a disk? Can it double rotate? All these kind of questions, we'll probably solve them, or maybe not solve them, 1 over r potential plus, what is SPH? Simple potential harmonic? I don't know what that means. It's just something that's been on my mind for a while. Right. So there's a bunch of different things that we can do here. But if I'm honest, completely honest, these questions are not the ones I'm actually particularly interested in solving. They're there, and they're useful. Oh, smooth particle hydrodynamics. Right. I've been reading so many papers in the field. I should have known SPH was smooth particle hydrodynamics. But again, these are questions that we can answer, and probably will be answered, but I don't necessarily care about them too much. What I actually care more is actually this would be under the 4D section, is the simulator part here. So I'm very interested in this. What I want to do is I want to do the 3D to 2D disk generation, basically a whole bunch of different times. Because in the process of reading up recently on the Barnes-Hutt literature, I've also kind of been reading in the color quantization literature. And I feel like there's, obviously a lot to be learned from both fields, because they both rely on octrees, and they both are used to basically take any spatial distribution of particles and split them up. And so I feel like, and this might not be exactly the case, but what I want is to create a set of tests to try to identify whether we could use some of the spatial partitioning schemes that are now used in modern color quantization techniques for Barnes-Hutt simulations and galaxy generation. So this essentially has two parts to it. One is the actual 4D simulations, which will hopefully be on 3 Blue 1 Brown's channel, because we've talked about collaborating on this if something cool comes out of it. And then the basically, I don't know what to call it, but for now I'm going to put this in quotes because this isn't actually going to be what it's called, but the world's fastest galaxy simulator. Now look, that's a very bold claim. I don't know if we're ever going to get anywhere near that claim, but we're going to say, just for the sake of the argument, that it's fast galaxy simulator or something like that. Again, don't focus too much on that. Just say, I'm trying to generate a new partitioning scheme, a new spatial partitioning scheme that is slightly more efficient. And that's kind of what I'm focusing on. I just don't know how to sell that to YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that. So for now, the stream is going to be under 4D Galaxy Simulator, and that's going to be kind of the name of this project. But for the most part, the interest I have in this project is, again, more in the more of the spatial partitioning scheme and stuff like that. World fastest is always a fun goal. Yeah, it's just with the Galaxy Sims, this is the thing that's super frustrating. So I recently read a paper just before stream. I was reading up on some of the papers from 2012. I know this a long time ago, 2012. But 13, 14? 2014. So in 2014, there was this paper. Let's see if I can find it. Milky Way Galaxy Sim. Milky Way Galaxy Sim. I'm sure I can find it if I just look for this. Maybe not. Let me do Google. 1 second, I'm trying. Scholar Milky Way simulation. Okay, there's a super cool simulation that came out. Gosh, let me just give you the paper name, then screw it, I can't find it. On gravitational tree code to simulate the Milky Way galaxy with 18600 GPUs. Let me just look up 18600 GPUs. 18600 GPU. Maybe this will find it. This is it. Perfect. This is what I wanted. Okay. So there was a paper in, was this 2014, I believe? Give it a second to download. Where people did a very high resolution, like visualization of the Milky Way-esque galaxies. I met him at Brown and didn't have a good pitches for videos. Well, to be fair, like he's not exactly in the. Grant is very particular about what. Wait 1 second. I'm struggling here. Let me just go here. Open up Zernal PP, and then we're gonna go to downloads 1.4.1.2. There we go. Perfect. Okay. This is the paper I was looking at earlier. Let's just go in here, scroll in. Okay, so this paper is from 2014. Keep that in mind. It's like, 8 years ago. So it's a bit old, but this is just one that I was looking at before stream just because it's kind of a nice introductory paper into the field and stuff like that. So I was looking at it a few days ago. Now, as far as 3 Blue and Brown is concerned, like he and I have been, we've been working together for the past year, a full year now. We've been working together for different various projects. The thing about Grant is when it comes to video ideas and projects and stuff like that, sorry, I had to move the microphone. He's very picky about what he does because each video takes months to do, right? And so, you got to take time to figure out what videos are actually the, best ones and which ones are the most interesting from not only like a YouTube perspective, but from his own perspective. I don't know. He's got obviously some very interesting ideas on what it takes to make good video content on YouTube. I don't necessarily agree with all of it, but no matter what he says, he's definitely successful and he's definitely found an audience. So when he says something about whether a video will or will not be successful, he knows his own audience and he knows that his audience will or will not like this thing, I would argue that like the difference between like 3 Blue and Brown and Mark Rober is that like Mark Rober tries to make something that's like globally useful for like or globally interesting to everybody, whereas 3 Blue and Brown tries to make something that's specifically interesting for his audience. And they're both like incredibly successful, and depending on how you measure success, they're both doing super well, right? Anyway. I'm rambling again. I do a lot of rambles for no apparent reason, but this is a video. This is a paper that came out not too long ago on basically doing a large-scale galaxy simulation. I'm so sorry. To simulate something like the Milky Way. And they talk about how they do the space partitioning scheme, all this kind of stuff. And they talk about the visualization. They talk about like, how you can create a solar system thing. Anyway, it's a very interesting paper that I would recommend taking a look at if you're interested in the area. But the thing about this was, it took 18,600 GPUs for this simulation in 2014. So look, I'm not going to say there is better hardware out, but it's going to still be hard to beat the simulation. No matter what we do, we're not going to get this good. But also, we don't need to get this good. They simulated billions of particles here. We're just looking for the overall structure of like a 4D galaxy. Does it double rotate? This type of stuff, That's kind of where we're at. I'm just surprised someone else is doing the 4D galaxy stuff, and I have to speed it up myself. Yeah, so as far as papers and stuff are concerned, I'm not interested in publishing a paper on the 4D galaxy stuff, but I am interested in publishing a paper on the new spatial partitioning schemes. Like that's actually what I'm interested in here. The 4D galaxy is just kind of like the flag, that I'm raising. If there is any interesting physics to come of this, I obviously will ask actual physicists who know better than I do. I don't know if I said hey Amras, but hey, thanks for coming in. Yeah, so I'm not super interested in the physics problems here. It's just kind of like an interesting question that's essentially just an n-body simulator and stuff like that. Starting to clunk out, nap time. Have a wonderful sleep, and I hope you get up in time for classes and everything in a few hours. Okay, so this paper led me to another paper, which was kind of remarkable. So again, this paper here was the one that did a large scale 24.77 petaflop on gravitational tree code for 1,800, 600 GPUs, right? But the fundamental code that created this is somehow more interesting, and it was used for how do I put this? It was used for a single GPU first. So let me give you that paper, because that paper is very interesting. So let me go here to I'm really doing a bad job here. Scholar of a sparse octree gravitational n-body. That should bring it up, I think. It did not. It did not bring it up at all, but maybe because I misspelled n-body. Okay, that didn't work either. Let me go back. N-body? Did that work? This one, perfect. They have an HTML here. Okay, so the reason this paper was so interesting, let me just go ahead and give you this, that, there. And the reason this paper was so interesting is because it's kind of efficient, but also they do a lot of sorts and searches, and they do a lot of things that are terribly inefficient for parallel methods. So here you see some benchmarks, with a bunch of different GPUs and hardware and blah, 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 about the different stages of the simulation. So they've got a sorting stage, a moving stage, where they actually move the particles one step at a time, the construction of the octree, the generation of the properties of the octree, and then the tree traverse itself in order to create the acceleration at every step. Clearly sorting is super poorly optimized on the GPU. The construction of the tree, again, super poorly optimized. They require a lot of atomic operations and stuff like this. And essentially anything we can do to avoid this tree construction or optimize the tree construction here and the sorting step, if we could remove that entirely, that would make this way, way faster. And so this is where a lot of the color quantization literature comes in, because that was already natively optimized for GPUs, and it's already useful for splitting up spatially a spatial grid in some ways. I think there is a lot that we can learn from that. And so I'm still trying to get up to the latest papers, the 2020 papers and stuff like that, 2021 papers. So I'm not quite there in the literature yet, but hopefully by the end of this week, I'll have caught up. I'm slowly getting there, I go through 3 or 4 papers a day on this type of stuff. So my hope is that by the end of this week, I at least know where the current state of the art is, and we can start attacking that. As far as doing the world's fastest galaxy simulator, look, the nice thing about the world's fastest anything is that it doesn't have to be super physically accurate, right? What we can do is we can just create something that's hey, okay, benchmarking this against Bonsai, which is this code base, benchmarking it against, a few other similar methods, we get the following results. That's kind of what we're looking for here. We're not looking for the fastest, we're not looking for the most physically accurate simulator. We're looking for the fastest simulator that gives us particular results, right? I'm super just rambly today, and I'm doing my best to follow up. Okay, it's fun, 4D equivalents of spirals and whatnot. Right, like you were talking about, exactly. In my understanding, tree construction is way less time consuming than forest stuff. It depends on the architecture, right? So the tree construction is very, very difficult on parallel schemes, on parallel architectures. The force stuff is incredibly easy. On the GPU, it just goes by like that. It's super quick. But the the construction part is always going to take forever, and the traversal stuff is also going to take forever. Like that's the hard part, right? Because for the actual moving of the particles, that's super easy, like to parallelize, right? At least in this naive implementation. Now, there's probably other ways that they did it that I wasn't super aware of, but the movement of the particles themselves, that literally is just every particle has an acceleration and can be done in a embarrassingly parallel way. But the rest of the algorithm can't be done that way, which is the core problem. Like some of the original papers in GPUifying this type of problem actually did the construction and the tree traversal and all that kind of step. Well, at least a tree construction on the CPU before transferring it to the GPU, which is obviously a bad idea because you've got transfer times and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, point is, they did a whole bunch of bad stuff, like stuff that, like, clearly, if you look at it back in hindsight, you're like, oh, that was stupid. Why did they even try that? But I mean, that's the nature of learning. That's the nature of like kind of growing and figuring out, what to do. I have a code base that takes roughly 2 seconds for force calculations, distance, Barnes hut, tree, traversal, parallel, and building a tree in parallel is like 2 seconds, or 0.2 seconds. You're probably right. I'm not familiar with the literature. There a different word between GPU multithreading and CPU multithreading. So to be fair, is there a different word between GPU multithreading and CPU? I don't know what you mean there. Are you saying different world? So maybe I don't understand how to generate the tree. For the second one, you can use concurrent. Oh wait, what do you? I mean, I just say parallel. I don't. I don't know. Maybe there is. But I don't usually use, I guess concurrent works as well. Yeah, that works. Anyway, I don't understand why your force, I don't know if it's a tree construction that is slow or the tree construction that's fast, or if it's the, or if it's, oh wait, I see what you're saying. I now understand. So that takes 2 seconds for the force calculations. Right. Okay. No, you're right about that. I now understand what you're saying. Okay. We're speaking past each other. So for me, when I was talking about tree stuff, I was talking about the construction, but I was also kind of sort of hand waving the tree traversal part of that step together with the construction part. But here your benchmark, what you say right here is about right. 0.2 seconds for the construction makes sense because a tree traverse step, which is a part of calculating the distance, and tree traversal, and all that kind of stuff, that's the slowest part. It's always going to be the slowest part. I'm sorry about that. I think we were talking past each other. I was literally just talking about moving a particle one step, right? The tree construction can be done in parallel on the CPU quite easily, I think, but the GPU is SIMD. Yeah, I don't know how you do the tree construction. So you can do it in parallel, as in like 6 or 10 cores or something like that. Depending on the depth of the tree, you can like generate each level independently, from what I can see. I think the big problem with their tree construction methods here is that it relied on, I don't know if the picture's here or if it was somewhere else. Essentially, it relies on space filling curves to ensure that you have like memory coalescence between like two pieces of memory that are close to each other, So like, yeah. Thumbs up, I'm with everyone. Wait, did I miss something? I'm sorry, maybe I'm missing something. Let me move some stuff really quick. Okay. But yeah, like I said before, I'm really, really far behind on the literature. And it's been a long time since I did Barnes Hut, like literally years ago. So your explanation made sense. Okay. As far as what Kropip was saying, I think you're right. I think that the tree construction can be done relatively easily in parallel. I think so. But I don't know if it can be done on SIMD, I think is a problem. I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but it's really interesting listening to people go on about stuff they find interesting. Loving it. Well, I'm glad you're here. Also, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, feel free to let me know, and I'll try to address it as soon as I see it in chat. And I need to stress something, like, no matter what I say here, I am genuinely trying to like learn about this as well as I'm going through it. So like my knowledge on Barnes Hut is a bit behind the times. I'm not saying it's it's like old exactly, but it's been a long time. It's been like 4 or 5 years since the last time I implemented it. And in addition, I'm not even convinced that we're going to be doing an octree grid at the end of this. There's a lot of little things to kind of talk about and things to work on here. So let me just go over here and let me just kind of sketch out kind of what my plan is for today's stream, and what I'm going to be trying to do. So let's say in the end what we want to do is publish a paper. Now again, this is super. We are really counting our eggs before they hatch, counting our chickens before they hatch here, right? Wouldn't it be a hexadecagrid? Right. That's the other issue here. So here's kind of the things that I'm interested in looking at. So I'm kind of wishy-washy, waving my hands around something like again, this is going to be hand wavy, a color quantization, inspired, spatial, grid. I don't know. I had a better name for this earlier, but spatial, I don't know. And so n-body simulator. We'll say color quantized grids. Or something like this. This is kind of what I'm interested in doing. Okay, so there's a bunch of interesting things that we need to talk about here. So one, we do need a naive implementation of Barnes Hut. The reason we need that is because this will be what we benchmark against. No matter what, we're going to need this. Okay, the other thing is, as far as benchmarking is concerned, we also need to make sure that we use the state-of-the-art method. State of the art. So the one we were just looking at was Bonsai, but also Bonsai-like. So whatever they're using now for the most recent things. What kind of space filling curve did they use for 3D grid? So for the 3D grid, let me see. I wrote it down. Give me a second. They used. It's somewhere in my papers. I'm sorry. The problem is. They're talking about Gordon Bell prizes here. Where did they put it? Maybe it was in the other guy. Give me a second. So they used the Morton space filling curve is what they said. Let me look that up. I misspelled curve, but z-order curve, right. Yes, this is what they used. I'm not convinced. So the resulting ordering can equivalently be described as the order one would get from a depth-first traversal of a quadtree or octree. Now, what's interesting about this is even though they used the Morton space-filling curve, they ended up doing a breadth-first search instead of a depth-first search anyway, which I thought was kind of weird. But whatever, like maybe I just didn't understand exactly how the splitting worked and stuff like that. State-of-the-art bonsai, or whatever. Okay, so for benchmarks, we need this to happen. 3. Now, this is where I'm quite interested. Essentially, right now, and this is what I don't know, but right now, when I implemented Barnes Hut before, I basically had to create a new octree. Not every time step, but most time steps. So the creation of the new octree, I found a few papers on, and again, this might not be the best way to do this, but I found a few papers on adaptive mesh refinement for octree grids. I found something on this. I'm not sure if this is actually useful or not, but I want to see what people are doing and what the current state of the art is there. And in particular, this is interesting because the adaptive mesh refinement stuff will hopefully also be useful for some of the computer graphics research that I want to do in the near future with doing a color quantized video, like an efficient color quantized video thing. This is going to be in the future. I'm doing a very bad job of describing it, but we'll get there when we get there. So this is another thing I'm interested in. What is the most efficient way to regenerate the octree? All of this kind of stuff. Right, and then finally we're going to talk about different spatial splitting schemes with color quantization, because I found quite a few interesting color quantization methods that do Yeah, essentially, they do different ways of one, tree traversal, and two, tree creation that should be way faster. So this is kind of what I'm interested in looking at. So let's see, because not everybody is at the same depth. So you can make the z-space filling curve recurse to a depth depending on the local depth of the tree, I guess. Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair because you've got to emulate. Okay, we'll talk about what the Barnes-Hut algorithm is for people who don't know, but you're right. That helps you emulate the depth ness that you need for the Barnes-Hut algorithm. But it seems hard to update then. Exactly. That's also my question. I think they just regenerate the entire Ox tree every time step, which is why like a fifth of the computation time is spent in generating the tree. I'm with you. Definitely benchmark it. If you turn 0.2 seconds building the mesh into 0.18, it really doesn't matter if the force calculation takes 2 seconds. Right. Well, you're right about that, but also it depends on what you're interested in, right? So, like, for example, the force calculation can be completely ignored for computer graphics applications because you don't care about that step. But what's nice about the galaxy simulation is that it's a relatively, like, it's just an n-body sim. And sure, yeah, like you said before, we can use smooth particle hydrodynamics, blah, 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 and all of that. But doing a full n-body sim here is useful for a bunch of different fields, and that's why I'm interested in it, you know? Now, we might end up having to do, and actually that might be something to put down. What about smooth particle hydro? And I'm also going to put in the same breath, though it should be in different breaths, the semi-analytic methods. Ideally you do a full n-body approach, but maybe we do need the semi-analytic methods here. I don't know. There's stuff to consider. The C++ build system is on tracks. I'm happy to hear that because I know there's been a lot of work, and I'm happy that it's actually going somewhere. Okay. So these are all kind of the, a rough sketch of the things that we kind of need to do to make this project successful. And now keep in mind, all of this that I just talked about here is literally just for 3D. So for benchmarking cases, what I want to do is do a bunch of different simulations of basically 3D to 2D, right? So I want to do a bunch of these simulations again and again and again, hopefully, we'll see, of taking a 3D distribution of points and turning it into a 2D disk. By the way, a few minutes ago, like 15 minutes ago, thank you so much for the bit, Anonymous Cheer, and also thanks for the follow, Callum Dismal. I really appreciate it. That one was relatively easy once we got the infrastructure sorted, and we have. Good. I'm happy to hear that. So for the benchmarks, what I want to do is a bunch of the simulations of 3D to 2D disks or spiral galaxies. And then once I'm relatively convinced that we have, a decently fast 3D simulator for n-body simulator, then what I want to move on is the 4D simulations, right? Now, with the 4D sims, we've got a bunch of other questions in terms of visualization and all this kind of stuff. Like, what's the shape of the 4D simulation? Does it collapse? Does it create a disk? Does it create two disks? All this kind of stuff. And the reason we want this to be relatively fast is because we're probably going to have to start with a bunch of different initial conditions. And if we have a bunch of different initial conditions, we can get a bunch of different states at the end. And so the faster we get this simulator done, the more of these simulations we can do, which will allow us to get more shapes in the end. By the way, Miabdi4, thank you so much for the subscription. Let me go ahead and put a Simula cow in chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. And again, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask. Okay, so now, for people who came in and maybe don't know what any of this is, that's a fair point. Let me go ahead and start at the very start by introducing what the Barnes-Hut simulator actually is. Barnes-Hut. Okay, this is going to be a naive discussion because, to be fair, it's been a long time since I looked into the actual algorithm of the Barnes-Hut method. We're going to be doing that in, 30 minutes or so. But for now, I just want to kind of talk about what it is, briefly. So let's say you have a bunch of, I'll put them in yellow. Let's say you have a bunch of stars. Okay, right. Now, these stars are in some sort of random distribution, right? Let's say what you want to do is you want to simulate how these stars move in space. Well, if you take 2 points, 1 point here, 1 point here, they're going to be separated by some distance, which I'll call r. And then you can say the force on any given particle is going to be equal to the gravitational constant times mass of 1, mass of 2 over r squared. Now, again, we can talk about what this means in 4D, whether it's supposed to be R cubed or any of that. We can talk about that later. For now, just doing a very simple simulation, the force between these two particles will have, m1, m2 over r squared. So if you want to do an n-body simulation where you have n particles, then in order to move one particle forward, let's say this guy here, you have n operations. Because it means that every single particle needs to look at all the other particles to see what its new force is, what its acceleration should be at this time step. And then you move on to the next particle, and it has to do all n operations. Then it moves on to the next particle, and it again has to look at every single particle out in the universe and figure out, hey, how far should I move, right? And so this is an n squared problem, because each of the n particles need to look at all of the other n particles before it can actually move forward. So what does the Barnes-Hut algorithm do? Well, it kind of makes an approximation. So I'm going to draw a bunch of points out here. Some of them are going to be very far away. Others are going to be kind of close in a big clump in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to split this into what's called a quad tree. Now in 3D it would be an oct tree, but here we have a quad tree. Essentially, you continually split up your system again and again until every particle has its own box. And there's different ways in which you do this, but for this approximation here, every particle gets its own box. So we're going to split this up here. This is going to be split up here and there. One second, maybe something like this, sure, and that. So this is going to be our Barnes-Hut grid, right? And so what we're going to do is, let's say we're trying to update this point in here, right? Well, this point in here is relatively close to this point, so we'll see that point directly. And it's relatively close to these points as well, so we might see those points, and it's close to this point and this point as well. But as you get further out, let's say to these points over here, well, these are so far away that we don't really need to look at them all directly. What we can do is we can treat them all as one giant glob of points, right? And so because this is an oct tree, the way this is done is by going over to that branch and then saying, okay, well, this branch is sufficiently far away. So what we'll do is we'll just not depth first search any further on that branch. Just say, okay, we're going to go over here. And then we're going to say, okay, look, everything over there, we're just going to treat as one giant particle with a center of mass that's like here or something like that. And so you can also maybe do that for these particles over here as one giant glob with a center of mass here. And essentially in this way, what you've done is you've taken a problem that was originally n squared, and you cut it down to n log n, I think. Essentially something that is faster. You've cut it down so you don't have to do as many points of computation. And depending on how resolved you want the simulation to be, you can basically consider more points or fewer points, right? With the extreme case of still being n squared, and the non-extreme case of just considering like two other points, well, the two extremes are considering every single point or considering basically none of the points, right? So this is the heart of the Barnes-Hut method. You essentially have a single particle looking at every other particle in the grid and asking, hey, do we need to consider this as a single particle, or can we consider it as a glob of other particles, right? Now, a few points here that I need to mention here. I mentioned stars, right? Now, the reason I mention stars is because when I think of galaxy simulations, I think of stars. That's what I think about. But in actuality, the Barnes-Hut algorithm is usually used to simulate dark matter. Now, if you're like me, before this weekend, or before now, you might not know what dark matter is. In fact, even now, you might not be sure what dark matter is. I talked to my wife about it, who is a theoretical physicist, and just for the record, I do have a physics PhD, so technically I'm also a theoretical physicist, and neither of us really had any idea what dark matter was, because neither of us do cosmological stuff. So, she had recently, though, talked to someone who was trying to basically, do a measurement of dark matter for the first time, and it essentially struck me that the entire purpose of dark matter at this stage in time that I know of is essentially to get all of the calculations to work out in cosmological physics. So if you do the simulation without dark matter, essentially the results of the simulation look wrong. Sure, you can do an n-body simulator with all the stars and everything, but in actuality, you need like 10 times as many dark matter points. I'm making that number up, but you need a large number more dark matter points than you do stars in order to get the proper galaxy formation. So if you don't do the dark matter simulation, you'll get your spiral galaxy and everything, but it's going to move super fast in the center when you actually want it to be moving rather slow in the center. And in order to get that to happen, you need the dark matter simulation. This gives me Sheldon Cooper vibes. Most of my advanced physics topics come from Big Bang Theory. Sorry about the tangent. No, that's fine. I'm going to be honest. I never watched Big Bang Theory before until very recently. My wife, again a theoretical physicist, really liked it. But for some reason, a lot of my friends, specifically my friends from college and high school, didn't like the show very much. They used to say that it wasn't particularly funny and that the entire show was just making fun of autistic people. And I just didn't watch it for the longest time because that's what I thought it was. And then recently I watched it. I was like, actually, this isn't bad. Like from a physicist's point of view, a show making fun of me, a physicist, it's fine. Like I'm not going to say it's the best show ever, but I was like, it's fine. I thought some of the points were actually kind of solid. Are we going to take relativity into account? I don't know if we should. This is another question. I think for the purposes of this particular simulation, I only really care about the n-bodiness of it. I don't care too much about the relativistic effects. But if we need to take into account the relativistic effects to get a spiral, that's kind of what we might have to do. So what I'm really looking for here is a minimum set of necessary parameters in order to generate a spiral galaxy. That's what I'm looking for. And I think the minimum set of parameters are, dark matter and stars. I think that's what we need. An n-body simulator with dark matter and stars. That's what I think we need. We'll see. We're going to basically run the simulation in 3D, see what we can get, and go from there. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to just recreate the Barnes Hut simulation that we did years ago, just to kind of go through the code, make sure it still works and all this kind of stuff. I just tried to simulate a single orbit. No, that's amazing. I just tried to simulate a single orbit in Excel and I'm already messing things up. I'm just surprised of all the tools at your disposal because I know you know C++. I know you know how to do like different languages and stuff. You're like, I'll use Excel. That's what I'm going to do. No, I'm impressed is what I am. Okay, I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break. Then I'll be back and we're going to just hop into the Barnes Hut simulator. Again, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, anything like that, feel free to let me know and I'll totally address it as soon as I see it in chat. So give me a second. I'll be right back. Wait 1 second. I've got a question. Is my audio output not working? I think it's not working. 1 second. Yeah, you should be able to... Wait. There's something wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. I'm going to try to fix it here, but I might need to restart stream really quick. Let me see. What do I have? Let's move this over here. Recording. I think that's fine. Jack, pulse audio... Wait. I screwed up. I might have to restart stream really quick. Give me a second and I will do that. Give me a second. I'll be right back.